If you were mistakenly placed in an asylum, how would you convince your doctor you were sane? I wouldn't. Instead I'd tell him I have no insurance, and so they would have to keep me there for free. Watch how fast they'll kick me out. In the US, most have programs that will pay for your stay if you make under a certain amount. Otherwise, insurance or not, they'll still keep you and charge exorbitant fees that they'll expect you to pay, which some will just let go to collections, ruining people's credit scores. If you're under 18, those fees go to your legal guardian. Yell at him. I'm not crazy. You gotta believe me. Putting me here was a mistake. Perhaps you could lash out violently to really emphasize your point. That'll get them going. You can't. Link. Rosenhan's study was done in 8 parts. The first part involved the use of healthy associates or pseudo-patients, 3 women and 5 men, including Rosenhan himself, who briefly feigned auditory hallucinations in an attempt to gain admission to 12 psychiatric hospitals in 5 states in the United States. All were admitted and diagnosed with psychiatric disorders. After admission, the pseudo-patients acted normally and told staff that they felt fine and had no longer experienced any additional hallucinations. All were forced to admit to having a mental illness and had to agree to take antipsychotic drugs as a condition of their release. The average time that the patients spent in the hospital was 19 days. All but 1 were diagnosed with schizophrenia in remission before their release. The second part of his study involved an offended hospital administration challenging Rosenhan to send pseudo-patients to its facility, whom its staff would then detect. Rosenhan agreed, and in the following weeks, out of 193 new patients, the staff identified 41 as potential pseudo-patients, with 19 of these receiving suspicion from at least 1 psychiatrist and 1 other staff member. In fact, Rosenhan had sent no pseudo-patients to the hospital. 19 days for someone that was actually sane. In October, my brother was admitted to the hospital for a suicide attempt. He has schizophrenia. He told them exactly what medication works for him and that it was the only one that would work. They decided instead they would just give him a completely different prescription. They kept him for a week and then let him go. 3 days later he killed himself. I can't believe they only monitored him for a week after changing his psych meds, yet these completely sane people had to stay in for 19 days. The mental health institution in the United States is ridiculous. I'm very sorry for your loss. I hope you are coping as well as you can do with the aftermath of your brother's suicide. I worked in psych admissions. There is a huge problem with psych hospitals. Okay. Typically there are 4 broad classifications for involuntary admission or confinement. Danger to self, danger to others, perversely or acutely disabled, and gravely disabled. Danger to self is suicidal people. People remain actively suicidal for about 24-48 hours. Then they become passively suicidal. There are usual warning signs of a suicidal person. The problem is that the people have constitutional rights. If someone comes involuntarily, they can check into a 24-hour observation unit and agree to go to an inpatient treatment facility for like 14-day stay. The key word here is voluntary. If they are brought in by a loved one or police for attempt or trying to do it, the state can only hold them for 24 hours, then at this point petition the court to take them for treatment against their will. Here is where it gets tricky. If the court doesn't issue or uphold the petition, you are let go. If the petition is upheld, then they can be held against their will in a facility or forced upon medication. Here is where the problem lies that most people don't understand. Insurance and doctors. Who pays for it? The govt makes 24-hour observation units free. Problem is, without universal insurance for everyone, it gets tricky putting someone in a long-term facility without it. Private insurance works, but they just can't let someone out who is suicidal, so they usually file for state coverage while the person is admitted. That puts a big drain on state budgets. By the time it has trickled down, the doctors and nursing practitioners are strained. If someone kills themselves within a particular time frame of seeing a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist has to answer to the board why he let that person go when they were actively suicidal. So it goes into this circle jerk of admission and discharges, playing hot potato with people. Not by their fault. Now when you start adding secondary issues such as drug abuse, it becomes even trickier. Is it the meth or the mad? To top it all off, the patient can sign what is called an Ask Me Anything against medical advice and discharge themselves from the hospital. When it comes to mental health, the public need to educate themselves. Relying on hospitals can be tricky. America basically recognizes a person's wish to die as a right. Some situations they hold you, then meds are given, but they cannot just hold someone indefinitely. Case managers and outpatient programs need more funding. Most psych hospitals are now filled with drug users instead of mental patients. When politicians refuse to even talk about healthcare, it hurts everyone. Don't blame the doctors and hospitals. They are severely underfunded in most places. One psychiatrist has to deal with like 40 patients a day. Tele and Zoom has made this easier these days, but some doctors want to physically see their patients, to notice things a camera can't. One doctor told me people get suicidal on drugs and come here. We treat them. And a week later they leave and go do more drugs and then try to kill themselves and are back here to repeat the cycle. Edit: I have to clarify. This is Arizona law. Not sure about other states, but the principles are usually similar. Do a sloppy job of pretending I'm schizophrenic. I was raised by wolves. I was 25 years old before I saw my first human being. Wait, is it a full moon tonight? Oh whoa. I wouldn't even know how to convince myself that I'm sane. Straight me right now. You ever stop and think and wonder, maybe it's not everyone else that's weird, stupid, abnormal, maybe I am. Watching Shutter Island really ducked me up. Hardcore drug seeking behavior combined with badly fake mental illness. Epilepsy is a good one. Medical professionals basically always know if you're faking seizures. If you convince them your primary issue is drug related and your mental health issues are just you faking, you'll be out pretty quick. Just keep insisting that you need Dilaudid for your back pain and then start shaking when they deny you. They'll give up on you right quick. In the USA, mention you don't have insurance and make too much to qualify for Medicaid to be double sure they have no incentive to keep you around. I'm allergic to all pain meds except for that one that begins with AD. You must know which one that is. I have no health insurance. Tell them that you are indeed insane and exactly where you belong. Try reverse psychology on them. Writing a letter on the wall in my own shit explaining how I'm wrongfully in there. I'd be essentially compliant but uninterested in treatment. But I'd constantly be asking anyone who'd listen how much they thought I could get from disability for being mentally ill, and what kinds of symptoms get you the most money. Symptoms that can get me declared permanently disabled, so I don't have to look for work. I'd also keep asking the doctors and nurses about pain meds. The good ones. You know, the opiates. How do I get some opiates? And what paperwork do I need to fill out for that disability claim? And do I get better food if I say I need to keep kosher? How much Xanax can you give me in a day? Honestly, I'll probably just chill there. What time is dinner? Arrays begin at 0. This guy knows too much. Lock him away forever and pump him full of medication. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. Can't diagnose someone if you aren't sane yourself. Taps forehead. You don't. Not how it works. They see themselves as being completely correct. Agree or disagree. It's validation that they're right. If they are wrong, then trying to do what they tell you comes across as insincere. So basically, you just have to hone your lying abilities. The whole experience causes PTSD though, but they won't see that. This happened to me. Sort of. Mistakenly might not be the right word, I guess. But I was tricked into signing away my rights indefinitely, to the discretion of the doctors, when my actual condition, essentially a nervous breakdown at the time, could have been solved by talking through my issues over a couple of outpatient therapy sessions. Fun times. Society really needs to retool those Orwellian laws that basically allows the mental health community to snap your civil rights in half on a whim. They were made for a very small percentage of the patients, a small percentage of the time, for very specific circumstances. People here placed on a hold and assume you were dangerously psychotic. because that is the extreme circumstances those laws were made for. The reality is, a common gossip mill could get you sucked into that system. But most people probably don't realize that you could be a few unfortunate interactions away from some nightmare out of a dystopian novel. Make them ask me a question only a sane person could answer. Black and blue or white and gold? I hoped he would recognize me as sane. I mean she is the doctor. What was I diagnosed with? Whatever thing. And exactly what symptoms did I display to lead to that diagnosis? Also, don't I have to be found in a court of law to be a threat to myself or others to be declared insane and forcibly put into an asylum? Because there was no court case, and to my knowledge I did nothing that would warrant one. Also, when was I diagnosed with anything other than Asperger's syndrome and ADHD? Also, do you even have records proving I received any form of psych evaluation prior to being sent here? Because last I checked, what you diagnosed me with does not have memory loss as a symptom. Patient is verbally combative and uncooperative. I'd start by asking the doctor what he would take as sufficient evidence that I'm sane. Well, not being in an asylum is a good indication. Now tell the friendly doctor about your childhood. Today in the modern world, stay calm. Contact some family members, friends who could vouch for me. Sit back. Try to be social. It isn't the 1970s anymore. It's not the 1970s anymore. But you still don't want to be in a psych ward unless you absolutely have to be there. The food is garbage. You have no free will. You either do as you're told or you're put in solitary confinement with nothing in the room but a thin mat on the floor for hours. As punishment, you'll be put on a slew of different medication as they try things out and see what works. You'll be cut off from the outside world. Depending on how the rooming situation is, you might have multiple people to a room and your roommates might be violent like mine was. It's not the 1970s, but you absolutely do not want to go to those places unless there is no other way. They will break you. They are designed to break you. Edit, they are not that bad. This isn't all accurate. You just had a bad experience. Coming from the people that work there, not the people that are patients there. Almost as if the staff that work the places wouldn't be subject to the same treatment as the patients. Take showers regularly and yoga. I think, as much as I'd want to behave bonkers and make a ton of noises, I make a variety of noises such as small bird chirps, cat meows, dog barks, and farty noises out of fun anyways. I would pose more control over myself to behave in a normal and pleasant manner. But I'm mentally ill and require medications. Be sane, or as I call it, stable, and have been placed in a few mental hospitals, no asylums, so I can just imagine that scenario if I wasn't ill. Just go to the state-run facility. They don't have enough beds in most states. So if you act halfway normal, you get to go without being admitted. How do I know this? It happened to my husband. He struggles with depression and was in a day program with a horrible psychiatrist. He told her that a med she added made him feel worse, and she just kept upping the dose. He told her about side effects such as losing feeling in his legs, and her solution was to admit him to get the dose right. He had to get there himself, although they would not let him leave until I came to pick him up. You know what the right dose of that medicine is? 0. Not 4 times the amount you give other people. In our state, if a psychiatrist or doctor orders you to be admitted, you have 0 recourse other than going to the courts. This was on a Friday. To boot, we are normal people who don't have an attorney on retainer and could be really hurt by a big hospital bill. I tried everything. I even talked to the lawmaker who had written the blasted bill that created that law. If he did not go to the facility, they could have ordered police to pick him up and take him. The psychiatrist staff disagreed with her orders, so they cooked up a plan where we would go to the state-run facility in order to keep him out of the hospital. They even rushed him through the last parts of the program so he would not have to return. The concern was that the psychiatrist would try to have him committed again. Needless to say, he wasn't admitted because he was not a danger to himself or others, unlike the poor souls we encountered in the waiting room. If you have insurance, the other facilities are more than happy to admit you with a psychiatrist's orders. But when it's not a money maker and space is limited, it's a different story. For so many people, the commitment process is key to getting them the help they need. Not this time, though. And before anyone says I made the wrong call, I have always said that, if he were a danger to himself or anyone else, that we would go the inpatient route. Also, a friend went through the Sane Day program, and that psychiatrist loaded her up on meds and told her that she was pretty, and if she dressed sexier then she would find a man and be happy. Ask for a second opinion. I work in a psych hospital, on an acute ward. Our general lows is 28 days. Best way to get out is to take your meds, engage with staff and patients pleasantly, and engage in the therapy offered. Show insight to your illness, and don't get angry aggressive with staff. Not taking your meds, and denying any mental illness. Getting pissed with staff, and acting aggressively is a ticket to stay for months. For your information, staff are constantly observing and writing down your every move. It's actually a very difficult environment for a paranoid person. I hope one day we find an alternative to locking people up, but I guess that's why I work in there. To try and make a bad experience better for unwell people in some way. Edit. This is explaining the best way to get out of a psych ward in the real world, which should never happen to a mentally well person. Asylums do not exist. Most patients admitted are already on meds, hence the take your meds comment. If you were truly well and had no symptoms, including that staff are not able to observe anything unusual or worrying, then you could be released off section within a week without medication. But if you are agitated, they may offer you benzos like Valium. You are able to refuse meds, not taking your meds, and denying any mental illness. Getting pissed with staff and acting aggressively is a ticket to stay for months. Wouldn't a completely sane person refuse unnecessary medication, claim to be healthy, and become angry at his unjustified incarceration? This patient is mentally ill becomes an unfalsifiable claim by your standards. That is an unscientific claim. You can. It does happen on occasion. I told my now ex we were getting a divorce. I left the house. She called our doctor and told him I was going to buy a gun and hurt everyone and myself, and that I needed to be evaluated. He pink slipped me. I was in there 4 days, after which time they realized what she had said was a lie, and I was released. Addendum: while I was in there, she filed for a protection order under the same premise, which was denied due to lack of evidence. It's amazing what you can lie about and not get in any trouble. By the way, I filed for divorce after getting out.